Hey guys, I'm Carmine Bianco of WagerTalk.com, and this is Stoppage Time. This is going to become a new weekly feature. We're going to talk about the domestic league soccer, Champions League soccer, Europa League soccer, and obviously MLS soccer, which is nearing its final 3 weeks of the regular season before they get into the MLS Cup playoffs and knockout stages of that league. We have with us, and he'll be a regular on this show, from sportsmemo.com, Nick Borrman. Nick, how you doing?
Carm, I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me here. I'm happy to be doing this with you on a weekly basis. Looking forward to giving some good information to the listeners out there, and hopefully helping everybody make a little money along the way.
Hopefully so. This is what we're here for. It's what we're going to do, which is going to become a regular on this show, is we're going to discuss today's show. We're going to talk about Champions League. We're going to talk about MLS, just because MLS it's nearing its end, and October 6th is decision day, which is for me it's a fun time of the year. That final weekend of MLS soccer is just unbelievable. We saw it last year with teams scoring in the 96th minute to make it into the playoffs. Teams getting scored on to miss the playoffs. It's a great time of year for that league. So those are the two predominant ones right now: Champions League and MLS. So we're gonna talk about those. I'm gonna throw 3 games at you, and you're gonna tell our listeners your thoughts on them, and we'll talk about lines, and we'll talk about match day 1 of Champions League that just finished last week. They have this week off for some midweek domestic games, and then we're going to hit Champions League again next week, October 1st, October 2nd, which with the match days 2s. Some surprises on match day 1 to talk about is like Liverpool and Napoli. Liverpool, last year's champions, they beat Tottenham in the final 2-0. Went to Italy, played Napoli, a team they played in last year's group stages, and again they lost to Napoli. They lost 2-0 this time. I don't really think it's any time to panic if you're a Liverpool supporter. They went to Napoli last year, lost, and they ended up hoisting the cup at the end. So they come home. They're going to play Salzburg, a very exciting young team with a 19-year-old kid who's scoring by the bucketfuls. But when they come to Anfield, like Barcelona did last year, it's a completely different beast. Liverpool will be fine. Other surprises for you on match day 1?
That one, honestly, I threw a free play out there on Liverpool. I thought just the value on them to win the game was good, but I wasn't very surprised by that result. I thought, as you mentioned, Napoli, they did the same thing to Liverpool last year. It's a tough place to go into and win for sure. I think PSG and how well they handled Madrid in that first game was, a surprise. Not that they necessarily won, but, they really limited Madrid in that game. They were unable to get anything going. I think Madrid actually had 2 goals called back for offside, but besides that, they had 0 shots on goal, I believe, that entire game. And that's without Mbappe, Neymar, Cavani all playing. So that was a surprise to me to see how big of a stretch line that game ended up being. But I was happy I was on PSG for that game to win. But I was surprised by that result.
Well, that's good on you. I didn't have a feel for that game, and I think it's mainly because of the fact that when I looked at the starting 11s for each team, or who the projected starting 11s were for each team, and seeing Mbappe missing and Cavani missing, and Neymar Neymar obviously is suspended for the first. It's actually the first 2 Champions League games. It was 3 for that he received for some comments he made after they were eliminated by Manchester United last year in the knockout stages. He made comments about the officiating and the VAR ruling and a penalty being awarded to Man United, which knocked out PSG. So, but he'll miss 1 more game and then he's back. Real Madrid were missing players as well too. They had players missing throughout that lineup. So it just was a game that when you have so many variables in that game, or players missing. It's just one that I didn't want to be part of. I didn't know, but good on PSG. I was really impressed with how they played, and we'll talk about that later when we're talking about some future bets. Juventus, Atletico Madrid. As you know, everyone knows I'm a Juventus supporter. Have been for most of my life, and going there. These are the two best teams in that group, and are likely the two teams that are going to come out of that group. So I think both teams went in and would have been happy with a draw. I know, my thinking was if Juve went to Atletico and came back with a point. That they were in the driver's seat. These two teams met in the knockout stages last season. Juve dropped a 2-0 decision at the Wanda before coming home and reversing that result with a 3-0 win at home to move on to the next round. I think the thing for Juve fans, which is probably a bummer as far as that game goes, is they had a 2-0 lead late and gave it up. Some questionable defending on the Italian team's part, and it's something that we'll talk about later. But they need to remedy fast, or it's going to be another failed Champions League experiment for that team. Barcelona, Dortmund. I know you're a Dortmund fan. I know you have been in the past, and I'm a little surprised about the scoreline. Maybe not as much. I knew that Barcelona would have played a tighter road type game, especially with obviously their main star, obviously one of the arguably best players in the world, Lionel Messi, not available. But to go there, I think they were a little lucky. A penalty save, which would have given Dortmund the 1-0 win. But any takeaways from that game?
Yeah, I thought the line at quarter of a goal to Dortmund at home, I thought was, a steal. Another game I had backed the home side there and was glad to do it. Like you said, Barcelona coming in, playing to a defensive type of game, looking for that point on the road, not a surprise. So I was very surprised to see that line for Dortmund at home and happy to get it. And you're right, they're lucky they got their point. That save on the penalty was huge for them. But really wasn't surprised by the result as much. 0-0 I certainly didn't expect. But I was expecting Dortmund to at least be able to earn that draw at home. So another game I was happy to see the result go that way. The biggest, I was, watching all the games, and the biggest disappointment I think you could argue, at least in my eyes, was Chelsea not being able to pick up even a point, at home to Valencia and losing that game 1-0. That was tough. That was my lone loss for the opening round on the Blues. And honestly, if you watch the game, or at least some of the highlights, and looked at some of the numbers there, the scoreline probably went against the run of play in that game. But it just proves that Chelsea, just like domestically, they're not able to finish right now. Aside from one game, I think they won 5-0 or maybe 5-1 at the Wolves last week. They really haven't been able to convert anything, and it's showing right now that they just don't have that guy up front. So that was very disappointing. I don't know how they're going to turn this around. I had them as coming out of that group, and I still think they have a good chance, but not being able to pick up a point from that game is going to hurt them. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of go forward in these next few games. But that was definitely another surprise result for me that, of course, I wasn't very happy with in that first match day.
No, and I don't blame you. When you look, inside the numbers, Chelsea held a 56-44 possession in that game. 21 shot attempts on goal, 6 actual attempts on goal. And when you look at that compared to Valencia had only 8 attempts on goal the whole game, only 2 shots on goal. Obviously, one found the back of the net. But it's one of those things where I actually believe that Chelsea can still turn it around. It's one of those things where they have a very young squad as well too up front. They're going to get better. It's possibly a lack of inexperience, but they have the ability. If they can put those chances away, they can get it done. The good news is this loss came on match day 1. So match day 2, they're away to Lille. It's a massively important game where I think they need to get the 3 points to stay in this. And then after that, it's match day 3 and 4 where they're going to play Ajax home and away. If they, at the worst, they need to come out of those match day 3 and 4s with 3 points. And set it up for for their basically their final 2 games. If they can get a win at Lille and pick up 3 points in their next match day 3 and 4 against Ajax, I have faith that they'll get out of this group. If they can pick up more than 3 points, obviously against Ajax, and this isn't the same Ajax team, obviously, that went to the semifinals last year. Obviously a couple important pieces of that team left, and I watched them through the Champions League qualifying, and they weren't convincing, to say the least. I know they won 3-0 on match day 1 against this little squad, but against a better technical team like a Chelsea, I think they may struggle.
Yeah, I agree with that. I loved Ajax last year. I was so disappointed, when that second half collapse against Tottenham in the semifinal, because I wanted to see them in the final against Liverpool, and honestly thought they probably would have put up a better fight than Tottenham ended up doing in that game, just because they play such a different style. But you're right; they lost 2 big defensive players this past offseason. In the Netherlands, they're probably still going to come out on top of that league. There's, besides PSV, there's really not much competition for them there. But yeah, I don't see them making as deep of a run here. I do see them coming out of this group, and you're right. I think if Chelsea, that's the make or break, is those 2 games with Ajax. If Chelsea goes in there and gets 1 point out of those 2 games, well, you can kiss them goodbye. They need at least 3, like you said. I think Ajax, with that easy match day 1 win, will have no problem coming out of this group. And honestly, if Chelsea can get anything out of those 2 games, I think they'll go. I think they'll beat Lille, no problem. But Ajax is still tough, and even without the 2 defensive players that they lost this year, they're still really, really good on the attack. Won't be as good on the back line. May struggle, like you said, against better tactical teams that may break them down a little bit better. But I'm scared of them still, getting out on the counter and getting the ball up on the front line, because those guys can score with a lot of guys, but they probably aren't as full all around as they were last year. So another situation where before the Champions League started this year, I did like Chelsea to come out of that group with Ajax, but now I'm kind of just suspect a little bit, and we'll see what happens. But my vote, or my rooting interest, of course, is with Ajax, and I'm hoping they go far again this year. But
if Chelsea can sort of emulate the game that they had this past weekend, where they played Liverpool, and it was it was a massively well-played game by them. I know they lost 2-1 to Liverpool, but it's one of those things where Liverpool's up 1-0, Chelsea tie it, they're celebrating, the stadium is, there's such momentum, and then VAR comes in.
Yeah.
The little rectangular VAR symbol, and it's reversed. And there was just a drop-off. It just seemed like for a few short minutes they switched off. Liverpool got the second goal, and at that point it looked like Chelsea was done. But they got one back with Conte scored, and they had a couple decent chances to equalize towards the end. So this team has some resiliency. So I believe they'll go to Lille and win there, and then we'll see what they can do against Ajax. But let's jump into match day 2. I'm going to throw 3 games at you, and I'll let you take it over from there. We're going to start with Real Madrid. Real Madrid is they're a 2-goal favorite, a flat 2 goals over Club Brugge. The money line is minus 448 on Real Madrid. It's plus 1,278 on Club Brugge. So basically almost 13-1. If you think that they can go to Real and win. The draw is 613 plus 613, and the total is 3.5 with the overshaded minus 111. Obviously, a little bit of heat on Zinedine Zidane over the last little while in the media. With that match day 1 loss, a lot of the things that have been going on with Gareth Bale and that team. But I think he a little bit of a breather on the weekend. They got the win against Sevilla, and maybe it eases a little bit of the pressure. But they're going to be right back at it on match day 2. And your thoughts?
Yeah, we already mentioned the fact that that first game was very disappointing for them when they went to Paris and lost that 0-3. Really, I just think they've yet to get going this year. Hazard, he missed the first 4 games. His first game back was that Champions League match, and he did play this weekend against Sevilla, which was good to see. So, it'll be interesting to see how much better they get as the weeks progress. They're a team that they have. If you look at the lineup on paper, they have all the names up there. Of course, they have Hazard, they have Gareth Bale, who surprisingly. And really, you have to give the guy credit. All the talk during the offseason was, we're getting rid of you, both from management, ownership. It seemed like it was a no doubt he was gone. And yet it never went through. And it's got to be pretty tough for anybody in any sport to know that the team's trying to unload you almost every way possible, and then they don't. And now you have to keep your head in the game, and you want to, these guys are professionals. This is part of the business, but to be able to go out there and give your all for the team that really didn't seem to have your back in the offseason. So kudos to him. And then, they have Benzema, who's been there forever for Madrid, scoring up front. So that, they got on paper, they got the team that can go and play, but it just doesn't seem that they've been able to click. And I just don't know yet. We're talking, there's no doubt in my mind they're going to get through this group. It's going to be them and PSG. Before the knockout rounds start, we're talking, February? So we have plenty of time for any of these teams to really get clicking. You mentioned Chelsea before. If they can just make it through, it's going to be a different team come February time. So Madrid's the same way. I think they're only going to get better. If you look at their results right now domestically, they've played 5 games. They're actually tied right now atop the standings. They haven't lost yet. So, things could be worse for these guys, but you're right. There is pressure on Zidane to get these guys to deliver. That's why he was brought back. And that was a huge win, as you mentioned yesterday, at Sevilla, winning 1-0, because Sevilla had looked pretty dang good to start the year. So that does certainly ease a lot of pressure. Defensively, that's kind of where they've been a little suspect in my mind so far this year. They've conceded in every single game except for that game against Sevilla yesterday. It was their first time they kept an opponent scoreless. And they've had 2 disappointing results. They had draws against Valladolid and Villarreal already this year. And if you look at the standings right now, you see them tied with Bilbao on top. So of course we can't expect Bilbao to be up there much longer. So we'll see what they do domestically. But Champions League, I think in this match, Bruges, they're Belgium's top team. They didn't finish. They finished second last year, but they've won 2 out of the previous 3 years before that. I think they're sitting in second place right now, but they have a game in hand. I think they're going to easily come out of their domestic league. But is anybody realistically giving a shot to go in here in Madrid and win? Of course not. But the line right now is -2. For Madrid, and at that under 3.5 is kind of where I'm leaning. I think that Sevilla game is going to give Madrid some confidence. I think they're going to step this one up a little bit defensively. Bruges, listen, their whole game is defense. If you look at their numbers in the domestic league, they've only given up 3 goals so far in 7 games. They did a good job against Galatasaray in their first match. And I think what they'll do here is they're gonna have to play a defensive style game. They're gonna have to limit Madrid's chances, and I think they're probably gonna do a pretty good job of that. I'm not giving them much of a chance to go in there and win, but I do think they can probably limit decent chances for Madrid. A 2-0 scoreline would not surprise me for Madrid in this game, but I think there's a really good chance for the under in this one. All right. So I'm looking at a low-scoring one here, and hopefully we'll get that one right.
I'm going to throw one more at you because then I want to get into like an MLS promo for everyone out there. And then we've got to actually wrap up the show. But Tottenham, okay, so this is another match day 2 on Tuesday. Tottenham is at home. They come off a 2-2 draw in Greece against Olympiacos, up 2-0, and another team on the road that blew a 2-0 lead. And this Tottenham team, to me, just seems to struggle on the road. This is now nine straight games without a win in all competitions, Premier League, Champions League. For this team, 6 losses, 3 draws. They are a slight underdog at home to Bayern Munich, obviously the German champs here, and 5-time winners of this tournament. The money line is Tottenham plus 183. Plus 183. Bayern Munich is plus 138. And the total on this is 3 as well too. Thoughts?
Yeah, Tottenham, if you look at their results right now, like you just said, they can't get any points on the road, and really they haven't really figured out their new home stadium yet. Kane hasn't been playing anywhere up to his level at this point, and you mentioned the Olympiacos game. I loved that game. I had Olympiacos in there. I watched that. I was very, very disheartened to see the scoreline drop 2-0 to Tottenham right away, because again, another score that kind of went against the run of play in that first half. Olympiacos, I thought, really dominated that first half. They had a quick penalty, and then they had a terrible, terrible turnover deep in their final third, and that led to the second goal for Tottenham. But we're lucky to get a goal right before half, and then tied it up early second half on another penalty. Tottenham did play much better in that second half. But Bayern Munich, like as you mentioned, team that's got a lot of history in this tournament. Of course, for the first time, and I couldn't tell you how many years, they look a little different. Ribéry and Robben, longtime staples of that team, gone. They're finally starting to look to the youth movement. They've been one of the older teams, of course, around for years and years and years. And probably besides Juventus, I would say they were one of the oldest teams. I think Juve is probably up there right now. I'm sure you could agree with that one, Carm. They, of course, they still have Lewandowski up front, who can score goals at will. They have Coutinho, who signed for Barcelona this offseason, and then their youth movement, as I mentioned, Gnabry's gotten off to a great start for them. He's 24, so sky's the limit for him. And Tolisso, he's 25, looks really, really good. They both look to be big contributors for them. Aside from their opening game, they had a 2-2 draw to Hertha Berlin, their very opening game. They played very well in my mind. They had one other draw against Leipzig, who I know you're big on this year, and I know you got them coming out of their group. So I think they've been playing well. I think they've been playing much better overall and consistently than Tottenham has so far. And I think you mentioned the price. I think there's a lot of good value there on the road side. I think 130, 135 is great for Bayern to grab them to win the game. You could go safe here and take them, minus a quarter goal line. That way, if a draw happens, you're only losing half your stake. But I like the plus 130, plus 135 price. I think Bayern can go in here. Yeah. I think they're playing confident enough, and I think they're starting to gel together pretty well. And I just don't see that out of the Spurs right now. So I like the visitors here.
All right, and you mentioned Leipzig, and I do like the German side. Obviously, Red Bull. There's a couple Red Bull teams in this. Red Bull Salzburg of Austria and Red Bull Leipzig. You can't really sleep on this team right now. They currently sit atop the Bundesliga standings. I think they're going to challenge Dortmund and Bayern Munich throughout most of the Bundesliga season for that championship title. Big win on Matchday 1, going to Portugal and beating Benfica. They don't normally lose games at home, so they're a very good team. And this is a team that that gives them a step up, winning that game on the road, because they're a tough team to beat at home, and I just don't see them dropping many points. Tells me they're going to get out of the group stages, and I did bet them to win this group. But you can get them right now at 50-1 to win the Champions League. And this is the thing is, once you're into the knockout stages, 16 teams, you don't know who you're playing until the draws come out. If you finish first in your group, you obviously get a little easier by getting a second place team out of another group when they go through the matchups. But we saw with Ajax last year, and maybe not a very strong or highly thought of Tottenham team who made it right to the finals. And when you're getting a price of 50-1, you can hedge that out later on. Definitely. Another future that I have is PSG. Right now, with all the turmoil they went through, the whole thing with Neymar wanting to leave, go to Barcelona. And the fans, the ultras, they basically on his first game back, they booed him on every touch of the ball. But you know what changes? The thing that changes is winning games, scoring goals. Fans forget. And if this team can clear that headspace, I always believe they have a problem. And we saw it with Barcelona. They beat Barcelona, I think it was 4-0 at home, and then they went to Barcelona in League Two and lost 6-1. Nobody would have thought that would have ever happened. It's that mental block that they have. If they can get past that, having a team with a very good midfield, a very good back line, and then Neymar, Cavani, Mbappe, and Di Maria on your attack, this is a team that can go very far in Champions League. And again, 8-1, you can hedge out, I believe. Listen, for the viewers out there that are watching this, Nick is off to a 5-1 start. Pretty impressive start, Champions League, 59% last year. You're up 66%, 66 units, bankroll gain so far in soccer this year. We have put out a promo out there. It is MLS 179 is the promo code. Now this is what it's going to get you. If you pick up a package, it's going to cover every single play that Nick or myself releases. If you go to sportsmemo.com, click on Nick's MLS promo, punch in MLS 179, you're going to get all his plays until November the 10th, which is the final of the MLS Cup. Hopefully it's LAFC and Toronto FC, but whoever it is, you're going to get all plays, including Champions League, Europa League, Domestic League. That's about 7 weeks of soccer for only $179 by using that promo code MLS179. You'll get the exact same promo over at WagerTalk for myself. And as you guys know, I'm on a bit of a heater in MLS, 18-3-2 the last 30 days, 86% with MLS plays, and 9-0-1 my last 10 5% soccer releases. So you can get 7 weeks of my plays as well too for $179 using MLS 179. All right, Nick, before we finish off, MLS, obviously Western Conference playoffs, or Western Conference, I think all the playoff spots are pretty much locked up. The bottom two might go to sort of the decision day on October 6th. The East Conference is pretty much set. The only thing that's left to be seen is teams jockeying for position. It's a new format this year. The first place team in each conference gets a bye right to the gets a first round bye, but this is no longer a two-leg affair in MLS. It's a one-game knockout. So team 2 will play obviously team 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5, one-game knockout. And the seedings will basically take them right to the finals. LAFC, should they make it to the finals, will have the home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They've won the Community Shield or Supporter Shield, as it's called in America, North America. New York City FC looks like they've locked up the East pretty much. Now with Atlanta, who probably had the only chance of beating them, Joseph Martinez is out and likely could miss all of the playoffs. So that's a huge blow to that team. Any one team that stands out to you in the East that can give LAFC, I think, who are going to make it to the finals, run for their money before we go?
I think it's only FC, New York FC. Atlanta, it depends. I mean, like you said, Martinez. I just read before we started today that DeBoer is saying he's not expecting this to be a significant injury, and Martinez will be back. So I don't know yet what the result of that's going to be. If he, of course, like you said, if he misses, the rest of the postseason, well, you can kiss their chances goodbye. But New York City, I mean, they're very, very, very tough team at home. I think, obviously, you mentioned the different format this year and the fact that it's one-off games versus two-legged matches throughout the playoffs is going to be huge for the home team, and New York being in the one spot has the driver's seat. So I think they have a good chance to get there, and then they're probably the best team consistently as far as top to bottom and being able to at least play possession football and keep the ball out of LAFC's hands or feet rather. To win, I think they're probably the best team out of the East. If Martinez is healthy and does play for Atlanta through the playoffs, because of the experience, the run they of course had last year, You could look at them a little bit too, but I like New York a little bit better. I think they're a little bit deeper, top to bottom, all the way through, and play a little bit better consistently throughout the team. So I like New York as the best team to give LAFC, but you're kind of in that weird situation where we saw LAFC clinch like 4 weeks ago. Their playoff spot, and really didn't have to do hardly anything to get that supporter shield position. So they're kind of in that weird stage of, all right, Velas, we took maybe 3 games off the team. Now he's trying to come back and play. They're just not quite, is it that they're not quite gelling, or are these teams trying to have learned a little bit about how to play against them, but they don't look the same.
I think it's a little bit of both. And before we sign off here, I'm going to go with a bit of a homer play, and it's taking Toronto FC at 20-1. Right now, this team is just not losing. They're playing so well. They went to LA and played an absolute perfect game. A 95th minute VAR decision to award LAFC a penalty kick, and that game finished equal at 1. They went to New York and should have came away with a draw, should have beaten New York City. They're playing well right now. They have a game on Wednesday, leg 2 of the Canadian Championship. They should put that one away against Montreal. They lost the reverse fixture 1-0. They should be able to overturn it. I'll be there to watch that one. And then they close out with at Chicago and then home to Columbus. I think win both and they get a home game, and I don't think they're a team right now that'll put them at about nine games unbeaten in MLS. I don't think there's and a lot of them are road wins. I don't think they're a team right now you want to play. You have Altidore, Pozuelo, you have Bradley, Gallardo, Benezet. All a couple new additions, and that team is playing very well defensively as well too. And a change in which they made is they put Endo up front, who plays alongside Josie Altidore instead of behind Josie Altidore, and just gives him that much more space instead of him, as weird as it sounds, instead of 2 defenders on Altidore, they have to be mindful of Endo. And since they made that change, they've started to win. So we'll see. 20-1. Again, I always like big futures that you can hedge out later if you believe the team is going to go far. This is Stoppage Time. I'm Carmine Bianco. This is Nick Borrman of Sports Memo. You can follow him at, let me get this correctly, Borrman, BORRRMANN00 on Twitter. Give him a follow. Nick's always got some free plays out there. This show's gone a little longer than it normally would, so we're gonna cut it. We're gonna cut it now. But MLS 179 is the promo. Head over to sportsmemo.com or WagerTalk.com. Get that promo. All plays until the MLS Cup on November 10th. Thanks for watching, guys.